you register for our performance of Chekhov in English with special comedic additions. Lady with a Lapdog with jokes and a happy ending. It's a performance of the Russian studio theater project that's been getting great reviews in New York. This is their one Washington performance. So if you want to join us, you have to RSVP online to get a seat. There's not overflow seating for that. It will begin with a reception at 5 o'clock tomorrow. And then Thursday next week at 3:30, we have From New Babylon to King Lear, the Kozintsev-Shostakovich collaboration, which will be done jointly with the Post-Classical Ensemble and AFI Silver Theater and Cultural Center. So please, is that here or it's there? Is it here or there? It's here. Okay, it's here. All right, good. For today's event, Putin's final term with a question mark. This is to avoid a question of fourth or fifth. I thought that was a sort of good wrinkle. We're joined by the great Mikhail Zygar, whom many of you know from his writing and his journalism. There is very little doubt about the outcome of the election that's coming up in just under a week's time, but the implications for Russia, for the wider international world as affected by Russia, are far less clear. To provide us with clarity, we have someone who certainly has tremendous insight. Mikhail is a journalist, writer, filmmaker, and founding editor-in-chief of what is still Russia's only independent television news channel, Dozht. His still current documentary project, right? Project 1917, or no?
Yeah, but actually,
winding down.
As 2017 is over, so.
Okay. So the thing about Mikhail that you learned very quickly is just by the time that you feel like you understand the great merit of whatever project he's working on, he's already moved on to a new project. So I'm sure he'll tell us about the next project today. He previously worked for Newsweek Russia as well as Kommersant, and was awarded in 2014 the International Press Freedom Award by the Committee to Protect Journalists, and he is, of course, famously author of All the Kremlin's Men Inside the Court of Vladimir Putin, which has been a bestseller, I think, from the moment it was released. Mikhail, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. That's a pleasure for me to be here in such audience. Probably I should start with something very short to give much more time for your questions, for the questions of the audience. It's funny that the title of our meeting is the final term of Vladimir Putin, and probably yes, and we've got probably an answer for that question. No, that's not the final term. He's not going to leave us after his next presidential term is going to be expired. We cannot. There is no clarity actually, and no one has got that clarity. But at least we know only one thing, that he doesn't want to leave, and he's absolutely sure that he's the one and only capable to be Russia's president and to be Russia's leader and to be the savior of our country. During the last year, I've been much more busy, not with current Russian political situation, but with the political situation 100 years ago, with Project 1917, and I had a lot of questions why the anniversary of 1917 is ignored in Russia, and actually not long time ago we had an official result. Actually, it was not ignored. After that year of the anniversary of the Great Russian Revolution, we had a very symbolic conclusion that, and it was very in a very surprising way articulated in a state TV channel, Russia, documentary made by famous journalist whose name is Andrei Kondrashov. Probably you've heard that Russian television personality. Not long time ago, the state television has produced a documentary about Valam Monastery. Actually, that wasn't a documentary about the monastery. It was much more the program message about the new Russian ideology. and it was actually a documentary about President Putin and his new symbolic ideological role in today's Russia. And the main message of the documentary was that President Putin is a unique historical leader for Russia because he has managed to unify all different parts of Russian population. He has managed to unify the reds and the whites, those who believe in God and Russian Orthodox Church, and those who believe in Stalin and Great Soviet Union. So, and it seems like Vladimir Putin believes in that. He believes that he's got a unique historical role, and he has made that. He has restored Russian greatness, and he has made Russia great again, actually. And that's the banner for his current re-election. And the fact that he truly believes in that, the fact that he knows that he's the only effective manager, and the fact that he believes that there is no one he can trust, because not because he thinks that all other bureaucrats are disloyal. He thinks that he's the most effective and the most experienced, and many people know that the more he spends in Kremlin, the more he tries to be involved in micromanagement. He wants to control everything. He wants to check any step all of the Kremlin bureaucrats take, because he is absolutely sure that he is the only one who is able to do it all. That doesn't guarantee us anything, but as for now, the situation might change within a year, 2 years, 6 years. But as for now, he's got no plans for stepping down within the next 6 or I don't know how many years. So at the same time as we are approaching these 6 years of turbulence, I must say that the situation and the atmosphere inside Russian bureaucracy is rather tense. A lot of people are feeling rather nervous because not because they are nervous about the outcome of the presidential election. They are nervous about what's going to happen since March 19th, because that's going to be 6 years of turbulence for Russian elite, for Russian bureaucratic system, because there is still no obvious mechanism how the system is going to be transformed. It needs to be transformed to, definitely, the constitution probably needs to be changed. The bureaucracy needs to be reshuffled. The reshuffle has already started with appointing younger bureaucrats as ministers and governors, and that process is going to continue. And that's the suspense, and that's the reason for a lot of people to be trembling, because that's the major major factor of their nervousness and instability. And we know that the new government that is going to be appointed within the first months of the presidential election is not going to be the final version, the final government that is going to be in charge of the country through the nearest six years, because President Putin is obsessed with surprises. So there is going to be a series of reshuffles, a series of appointments, probably a series of governments within the next 6 years. I must finish probably my short introduction with mentioning what's going to happen with the Cold War #2. Probably we should expect the Cold War #2. Actually, it has already started. We've all heard the latest speech, nuclear speech of Vladimir Putin. There is nothing surprising in that. He is very consistent in his message. He has always, since probably Munich speech in 2007, he was demanding for international respect, and actually he was appealing for he has been appealing for the new world order, a new global security system, probably Yalta #2, to set up the new rules of the game. So that's the continuation of the same idea. There is only one possibility for President Putin and for Russia to be perceived as a great country. In terms of economy, that doesn't work. The only way for Russian elite and for Russian president to be treated as the equal partner and as the major stakeholder is to come back in a way into the Cold War terms, and to remind to all the global Russia's partners that nuclear weapons are still important. That's not for him. That's not a threat. For him, that's the only possibility to continue the conversation in those with that tone he prefers to hear. He wants to be treated with the same respect as Stalin was treated by Roosevelt and Churchill during Yalta Conference. I don't want to compare him to Stalin, but that's the only possibility that is acceptable for his point of view. Thank you so much. I hope that your questions are going to be much more exciting than my answers.
No, thank you, Mikhail, and thank you so much for getting us quickly to discussion. We have plenty of time. Let me start with, I think, a question that's on a lot of people's minds, and that is the succession question. You were right to go to both the sort of domestic political dilemma and the geopolitical dilemma, right? These are the two big problems. On the domestic political front, it seems to me that the Russian political system is like the market, in that it prices future certainty and future uncertainty into today. So when you had Medvedev in the caretaker role, you very quickly had people thinking about, well, what comes next, and kind of making their arrangements. And then you had the system, you had Putin responding to that to prevent a future bad outcome. In the March 19th and afterwards scenario, tell me about the two categories, the sort of the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns. The known unknowns being the players who we've already speculated might be either anointed as some type of successor, right, relied upon to form a government, whatever. What happens to those people as soon as there's any signal that, these people are going to be given some type of privileged position or have responsibilities put on them? And then what about the unknown unknowns? What can we say about the next Putin-type figure, the one who comes out of nowhere with no expectations, who's been intentionally hidden and suddenly is revealed to us?
First, I'd love to start with the last point. I think it's too early and too difficult to speculate about what comes and who comes after Putin, because we don't know the moment when it happens, because that's the most important thing. Not who, but when, and it depends. And who that's going to be depends on the factor when it's going to happen. We obviously know that Russian political elite is very is not unified. Actually, there are no clans. There are no permanent groups. Almost everyone is trying, in a way, struggle everyone else. But the majority of that group is very liberal. The majority of Russian political elite, of Russian government, are very I love calling them sleeping cell of liberals. They are not willing to express their pro-Western or pro-democratic views, but everyone knows that they are. They would love Russia to be very pro-Western, and they come from that background. They used to work for Gaidar's team, for Sobchak's team, for Chubaisa's team, and now they are not supposed to express their values, but they are waiting desperately for the moment when they can allow them can afford themselves speak freely. That moment doesn't come, but they hope that one day it's going to happen. That's going to happen. But at the same time, that group is being replaced, or there is another group. It's not a clan. It's not the group of people who share the same values, because they don't have real values. But that new group of so-called governors, Nikitins, or like that there are 3 governors with the surname Nikitin in today's Russia, and most of them look completely the same. They are usually compared in Russian media to Agent Smiths from Matrix. They are like young. They are representatives of new Komsomol, Putin's Komsomol. They are not liberals. They are not sleeping liberals. They don't have any background from being young Putin's bureaucrats. And this faceless group is probably much more important. And if we're watching, if we need to watch the abyss, to watch for some potential favorites to turn up, we should watch that group of people with unknown surnames, with very unusual faces, because we will never recognize them if we see them for the first or second or third time.
So by the old kind of Kremlinology metaphor, don't look at the top row above Lenin's mausoleum, look in the crowd kind of down below.
Probably that could be an option, because it looks like that it looks like that group of people who could not be considered as Putin's friends, but could be like sons of his friends, or could be his nephews, could be his assistants or secretaries or bodyguards, whatever. They are loyal to him. He is absolutely sure that they are loyal, and he considers them to be much more, if not effective, but controlled. And he's choosing from that basket.
Let me ask you one more question before I throw it open, and that is the internal analog to your new Cold War framework in geopolitics, and that is the internal enemy. He has made use, as part of his narrative, in different ways at different times, of different kinds of internal enemies. I picture this cartoon, which has been going around social networks. Some of you may have seen it. It's quite crude, but forgive me. You have a red soldier and a white officer, and they're asking a babushka who is occupying the city, the reds or whites. And she says, no, actually, it's the blacks, the oranges, and the blues, as in the gays. And this is clearly an attempt, to remind people that there is an other, an internal other to be afraid of, as well as the external other of the West. How far can he keep going with that? Who is next? Who's left on the hit list? And has he created something that in the next 6 years he cannot contain, that he cannot keep control of?
I'm as usually I'm very bad in any forecasts because I'm always forgetting my crystal ball, and I hate looking into that because every time you try to foresee anything, to predict anything, if you say something terrible, you happen to be right. So we know that. There is a group of people. I don't know if we can call that group of people, but he is rather disillusioned. He was rather disillusioned with Russian middle class, with Russian intelligentsia since the protests of 2011, 2012. He keeps repeating that he doesn't trust those people. What's happening with in Russia? There is a word kulturka, with culture people. Proves that they are not the people he wants to talk to. They are not the people he wants to address to and to rely on. The case of Kirill Serebrennikov is probably one of the most symbolic domestically, and that's the one trend we're facing now, and we're watching what's going to happen next with in terms of that development. There are lots of speculations in Russia. What's going to happen? What's going to happen with internet limitations? And that's probably the key issue for civil society. Russian civil society is internet.
Mm-hmm.
Internet freedom is everything we've got.
Mm-hmm.
That's the major basement of Russian of free Russia. We don't have traditional media,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean that we don't have free media. Lots of Russian journalists who used to be quality journalists, investigative reporters, who used to work for different quality media in the past, remain rather active.
Mm-hmm.
They are all online. In those terms, Russian media are probably slightly more progressive than most of global media, because that's a global trend. That the traditional newspapers, TV channels, all types of media are dying, and the most progressive journalists go online.
Mm-hmm.
In Russia, that process is over. Newspapers are already dead. But that happened not due to economic reasons, but due to political reasons, because there is no possibility to be an independent journalist working for traditional media, but very good chance to be a journalist working for online media, and that's why that's really important, and that's the only important thing, for not the only, but the major factor for the next presidential term, and we must watch that.
Okay, well, you continued what's become a well-worn Washington tradition, which is when we ask for names in Russia, we get general categories. Thank you. But no, it's a good launch pad for the discussion. We have a lot of distinguished and informed observers of Russia in the room. So please, there are microphones.
I mentioned surname Nikitin.
Nikitin, we got one name from you. Yeah, okay. So we have microphones on either side of the room. Please identify yourself, ask, and your affiliation, and then your question. Okay, Anders, right here. And if you can keep your answers relatively short, we can get, I hope, most of the questions in.
Anders Åslund, Atlantic Council. I read your book, All of the Kremlin's Men, with great appreciation, extremely useful. I would like to ask you about what you touched upon, the legitimizing function of aggressive foreign policy for Putin. How would you mean, you mentioned his speech with all this pyrotechnics in the State of Union speech. We are seeing Donbass, Syria, and now the attack in Salisbury in Britain. How would you put this into a context, and how is it useful for Putin for legitimizing his power? Thank you.
First, as the main idea of the book you just mentioned was that there is no actual strategy. Even in terms of international policy, there is no strategy. So I guess that there is no plan that Russian foreign policy should be aggressive. On the contrary, I can guess that there is a possibility of some very positive developments. For example, for Donbass. For example, as far as I've heard, the negotiations, the position on Donbass in Kremlin, or like what's being discussed, is like very positive. There could be international administration, there could be peacekeepers from non-NATO countries, no problem. It's not. There is no goal to conquer the world or to conquer Donbass and to make it another Russian region. The idea is much more global. The idea is to have the new rules. Vladimir Putin wants to be like the global pacifier, the global member of the board. So he doesn't need to be only assertive. He wants to be heard. In that terms, everything is possible. So but that's a tactical issue. He knows that he used to think that only aggressive rhetorics help him being heard, help him being popular within the country, because majority of Russians, or at least some Russians, prefer to feel that Russia is a great country. They love that feeling of national pride. They've been missing it for many years. So now they feel that he. I usually compare that to a feeling of being a fan of your favorite football team. Putin is like a favorite football team that is winning. So there is no disadvantages in that aggressive rhetorics. That's good domestically. That's good internationally.
Great. Okay. Let's just go right here, gentleman in time. I'll come around.
Mikhail, здравствуйте. My name is Jordan Harms. I'm a graduate from the School of Foreign Service at Georgetown University. Moving away from the geopolitical situation, I wanted to get your opinion regarding the domestic political situation, specifically the opposition parties in Russia. It's fair to say that Putin owes a large part of his political success to the fact that the opposition parties are very disorganized, and a lot of times they just can't field a candidate that can articulate a coherent message opposite to Putin other than «Я против коррупции». No, конечно, everybody's against corruption. Everybody is against nepotism, but that's not enough to win votes. It's not enough to sway a voter.
So the
as-
question?
Yes. So my question is, if you in your mind, what do opposition parties in Russia need to do in order to stand a better chance against United Russia in election?
Also, are there any opposition parties?
They need to do only one thing. They need to appear. Just there are no opposition parties in Russia, and actually there is no political. Unfortunately, that's much more clear during the last years that we don't have anything. Last year, I guess, if not 2 years ago, we had the latest parliamentary election with the lowest record-breaking turnout. And the reason was absolutely clear. No one was running. You cannot cast the ballots if you don't have the politicians. We don't have politicians. That's the real problem. There are a lot of people hypothetically active. Lots of social activists, lots of people involved in charity, in different social movements, but no one would ever think of running for an office. No one can really seriously try to pretend that it's possible to change something if you become politician. That's not working. Everyone knows that actually being a real politician, independent politician, is probably the most dangerous profession in the country. And in that terms, the most symbolic figure is not Boris Nemtsov, although after his murder, the situation changed to what we have now. But probably the most symbolic figure is Evgeny Orlashov, who used to be the opposition mayor of Yaroslavl, and he's in prison. And that's the symbol. If you are trying to become a serious opposition activist, you face problems, real problems. Your family face problems. You can find disgusting videos about your sexual life on YouTube. A lot of different problems. Not specifically. You're not endangered. Like you're not going to be killed, but you're going to be ruined, probably, if you just start thinking about being a politician. So that's the major factor that makes the political situation, I would say, unstable, but it's not unstable. There is no political situation. The current presidential campaign is magnificent. That's the best thing we've got for many years, and thanks to Mr. Kirienko, who has organized such a campaign, because that looks like as if we had some political system. And if only after it's over, Ksenia Sobchak and Pavel Grudinin are going to remain politicians, that's going to be positive signal, probably. I do not believe that they are going. I don't know. For example, if those two politicians, those two figures, continue being politicians for many months, that's going to be positive. So far, we've got only only two politicians in the country, and both are always running for presidential position. Vladimir Putin looks like he's always campaigning, and Alexei Navalny is always campaigning. Like, we've got only two politicians, and that's not enough, I suppose.
Okay. We'll go to the back, Kathy. I'm going to try to get to everyone, as long as your questions are short with a question mark.
Kathy
and the
Cosman,
answers too.
retired. My question is short. How would you assess the success of the Traditional Values campaign, especially among evangelical Protestants and others around the world? Thank you.
You mean of Putin's push for traditionalism? Does he appeal to other conservative people around the world?
Yeah, I think I do think that's for Russia, that's rather cynical but very pragmatic. Um, that's that's an approach that has been developed for for many years and not immediately became successful, and it's not still very success and very popular in Russia. Uh, I wouldn't say that traditional values agenda is it looks like a mainstream. It looks like much more mainstream than it used to be. But we actually don't know if 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 the majority of we probably don't have any reliable statistics, but it doesn't look like that agenda is really is real mainstream for Russia. Most of people um, mm, who pretend to be the opinion leaders look rather marginal, and all those defenders of the feelings of believers and all those organizers of those campaigns, like parliamentarian Natalia Poklonskaya, look very marginal. Um, so that campaign of promoting traditional values as a part of Russian ideology is not extremely successful. So I'm not. There are speculations in Russia that very popular speculations that we are approaching to a position when we can find ourselves being an Orthodox Christian Iran or something. But that looks ridiculous. Russia is very Soviet country. It's not very religious country. Russia is a country where people who claim that they are Orthodox Christians go to church once a year, not every Sunday. But yeah, Russia is not a religious country. So even those people who pretend to be very ardent believers are not really. If I'm not sure that I understood your question about Protestants. Yeah, but I'm not an expert about that. I think that any Putin's perception outside of Russia is rather. I don't know. I understand that a lot of people, especially Russian-speaking people, who live outside Russia, can be in love with Vladimir Putin, and there is one important reason for that: they haven't been to Russia for many years.
Okay. All right. Let's take some more. Yeah, it's the gentleman right here.
My name is Tomasz Modrzejewski. I'm a student at Daniel Morgan School of National Security from Poland, and I have a pretty connected question about this. Would you say that it would be inspirational in the Kremlin these days, as we mentioned, the aggressive foreign policies or the insight? I'd like to ask about the concepts of Alexander Dugin. Are they popular within the Kremlin's men or not so much?
I think that they've got their own concepts, and Dugin is not a spiritual father of Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin doesn't need a spiritual father. He is a spiritual grandfather already. There is no one higher. The period when Alexander Dugin was supposed to be was supposed to run or was known for running one very important TV channel named Tsargrad is actually over. The TV channel is not needed anymore. The TV channel that was created to become Russian Fox News has not become Russian Fox News because every Russian state TV channel is a Russian Fox News. We don't need another one. So Vladimir Putin is his own Alexander Dugin. He doesn't need another Putin.
And right here, woman in green sweater. Yeah.
Elaine Sarev, Associate Rector for UACU, WIUU in Kiev, Ukraine. There's a phrase, never say never. Very recently, Mr. Putin said, quote, "We will never give up Crimea." How do you see this as a never say never situation that will reverse itself in time? Can you just comment?
It's always hard to make any predictions, but I see no sign so far that anything has changed in terms of Crimea since 2014. I haven't been to Crimea ever since. So I don't have my own experience. I haven't talked to people there, but there is some kind of consensus in Russia that the population of that region is satisfied with what's happening. There is still a consensus in Russia that Crimea is ours, and that idea is still popular. If a lot of things have changed since 2014, the perception of the conflict with Ukraine has changed a lot. Actually, it's very interesting that for most Russians, the war is over, and just no one many people do not understand what's happening there. It's over. It's long over. Long time ago. Yeah, we finished the war. So for Ukrainians, it's still on, and that's the difference between the perception of the situation in Moscow and in Kiev. A lot has changed in terms of Donbass, because probably, and that freaks me out, that Donbass is forgotten by many people in the world, by global media, by European media, by American media. No one is mentioning Donbass, and that's the real problem. That's actually, the war is still on. The war is in Donbass, not in Crimea, and that is the real problem no one is talking about. So I think if we raise some issues, if we feel nervous about some regions in Russia or surrounding Russia, Donbass is the key issue, and if we come back to the question of Crimea, I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen in a century, but I see no signs of any changes of social attitude to Crimea.
Mikhail, let me, sort of provoked by that important question, let me ask you this. So we often presume that kind of Putin always wins, right? And he always wins either through sheer force, just sort of pushing till he gets his way, or through some kind of subterfuge. Is there any case, can you think of an example where Putin gets what he wants by making a concession, whether it's domestically or internationally? In other words, any of these questions are premised on the idea that there's some way in which he negotiates, trades, makes concessions. Can you think of cases where that actually happens?
I remember perfectly well that actually he started his first presidential term with what he thought were concessions, like when he shut down all Soviet bases in Vietnam and Cuba, Cambrai and Lourdes. He saw that as important concessions. He had his own motivations, but that was like that was another Putin who was thinking that was effective. He is completely disillusioned with that tactics. He thinks that he was being cheated, and he is supported in that approach by both like liberals and KGB people. KGB people with KGB background have stereotypes that we need aggressive rhetorics, and like liberals are not the ones to be promoting concessions to the West because of their probably and they talk much about that because of their problems back in 90s. A lot of liberals from Putin's inner circle keep on reminding that they were kind of betrayed by the West, that Gaidar's government was betrayed by the West when they were expecting substantial financial support, and nothing happened, and so no concessions could be really effective.
So in other words, don't expect any.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Take the gentleman here, and then we still have 10 minutes.
Alexander Naumov from George Mason University. So the narrative of fortress, Mark Galeotti calls us fortress Russia, like the Cold War II, but from the domestic side. That Russia is surrounded by fires and only the Russian army, hard power can put them out. Do you think that this is going to continue after the election? And can it block future cooperation with the West, such as the possible UN peacekeeping mission in the Donbass, for example?
You know, the final goal is not being a fortress, but being a zone of influence, and Kremlin doesn't want to be to look like a fortress. They want to have much more than a fortress. They want to have territories. They are sure that they are safe, they are controlled, and they are loyal. At least the territory of ex-Soviet Union might be like in that terms zone of Russian influence. So that's the goal. So yes, they think that assertive rhetorics plus assertive rhetorics is the important condition to start the negotiations. So it's a very tricky approach, but they always continue. They always keep on hoping that, since that's like a person who cannot start going into fitness, but always says that, okay, since Monday I'm going to a gym. They always keep saying that, okay, right after the presidential election it's going to be better. Okay, before that we had, okay, after Trump's inauguration it's going to be better. Before that, okay, after American elections it's going to be better. They always keep on saying that after some certain point something can happen, and there is going to be reset button, but it's going to be much more effective because we are more respected. Now we are more important. Now we are more assertive, and that's why we're going to be more effective. So they don't want to be a fortress. They want to start negotiations, but another negotiations.
And the gentleman here.
Thank you. My name is Wei Wang, and I'm a graduate student of international relations. I'm a Chinese. I wanted to know what is the Russian liberal intelligentsia's reaction to the Sino-Russian cooperation, especially in the fields of internet censorship. And some people say in Russia we should adopt Chinese-style social credit systems. And also I heard the Chinese Party, Communist Party's school is training the cadres from the Russian Communist Party. Could you please comment on that?
And if I may add to that, Mr. Xi has just demonstrated a lesson in how to indefinitely extend one's rule.
Yeah,
Many lessons from China.
many lessons. No, we. I don't think that lesson is needed for Vladimir Putin. You know, we never, frankly speaking, we never spoke serious. There was no serious discussion in Russia that the Chinese experience in dealing with internet is applicable in Russia. There are speculations on that, but that doesn't look credible. But as I've mentioned, that's the most delicate moment, and that's the most important issue. And a lot of people are nervous about that, and a lot of people are thinking about what's going to happen. That's what everyone is afraid of. We've heard a couple of weeks ago some high-ranking official saying that technically Russia is ready to switch off internet. No one understands what it means. Technical, okay, but psychologically, yes and no. So it still looks like no horror story for the kids, like that they are going to use and all to use the Chinese textbook, and they're going to shut down internet. But generally, if we speak about the relationships, I think that China is very not underestimated, unknown for Russian political elite. Russian political elite is still very focused on the West. All the talk about Eurasia, all the talk about the new priorities, still much more talk. There is an expertise like in Rosneft. That's an important center of expertise on China. But generally, if we speak about political elite, about the bureaucracy, is very focused on Europe, and they are getting some more experience about Middle East now, after ignoring Middle East for many years, and they are still not getting more profound experience about China.
Okay, let's do this. I see two hands up. Let's take both of those two questions, and then we'll give Mikhail a final bite, and then we'll have to wrap up there. So the gentleman here, and then gentleman in plaid.
Thank you.
I apologize to anyone I didn't get to.
Eric Black, I'm an analyst at Sands Capital Management. We're institutional investors in Russia. How have the events over the last few years impacted Vladimir Putin's thinking on the economy and economic policy, and how do you see that evolving today?
Okay, and then let's take the question right here as well.
Hi, my name is Dmitry Preobrazhensky. Thank you very much. Two quick questions. The first one is, who will be Putin's largest support group in this election? And the second question is, how much demand is there for more autonomy in local government? I know that the issue of governance selection has been one for quite a while. So I'm just wondering how much the people and the politicians locally want more autonomy. I could be way off, and they want more federal intervention in their local elite. Thank you very much.
Great. Okay, so economic policy, Putin's base, and local autonomy.
First, I don't see any sign of Russian government or Putin's circle being worried about economy. The situation is okay. Russia, yeah. Everyone is pretty sure that it's okay. Standard and Poor's has raised Russian position. Russia seems to be popular again. I've been to London, like that was before the latest scandal, but last week, and all the investment banking people I've been talking to were saying that, yeah, Russia is popular again. It's now it's becoming more fashionable to invest in Russia. So Russia doesn't look that terrible as it used to be half year ago, and that were not people from Kremlin, that were people from London saying that. So there is no, it doesn't look to be very urgent to start some painful reforms, and we know Vladimir Putin's psychology, that he hates painful reforms. The latest painful reforms Mr. Zurabov was organizing in 2005 when he was abolishing the privileges for pensioners, was the worst page in Putin's history. So no more painful reforms is going to be fulfilled, implemented during the next presidential term, I suppose. Although a lot of rumors of the pension of new pension reform, but that's out of top priority. All the priorities are on a global level, not on economic level. What is economy? We are not competing in terms of economy. We are competing in terms of nukes.
Putin's base and local autonomy.
I suppose that Putin's base is still the same as it used to be. They have the same Russian people as Vyacheslav Volodin when he was appointed as chief political strategist, has shown to Vladimir Putin that working class, that those people who can embrace traditional values and that want Russia to be great again, that people are his power base, and they are still there. We don't know. That's obvious that we don't know the numbers, and different people say that like the most that's a very funny gossip, but I've heard that there is a problem that if the turnout is low, and if a lot of people are boycotting the presidential election, the result could be too high, and that's going to look bad. Like Putin is not supposed to have 95%. He doesn't want to look like Turkmenbashi. He wants to have 70 something, and that's okay.
Mikhail, I want to thank you, but first, and I know I'm going to really piss off whoever's coming in next, just tell me, what are you planning to do on March 18th?
I'm thinking that that it's a tricky question, but I'm going to fly from America to Russia, so won't be even physically able to do anything from working or sleeping on the plane.
Good answer. And I hope you have a drink. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us. Please join me in thanking Mikhail.